When I started learning Russian in 2016, I had a big problem that you'll probably recognize. I simply could not understand anything that native speakers said. It just seemed to be like one long word that you didn't even know where the word starts and where the word ends. So I decided to solve that problem, and long story short, I found some sketchy top 1000 common Russian words list, and I put them all into a spaced repetition app. And the results after doing that for a couple of months for 10 to 20 minutes a day was quite good, because I now knew the 1000 most common words, and my reading skills and my understanding skills grew quite much. But there were a couple of problems. First of all, my thumbs were sore for 2 weeks after filling in this 1000 Russian words without really knowing how to type in Russian. There were a lot of sketchy words in this list. Like, for example, instead of saying отвечать for to reply, I said отозваться, which is technically correct, but no beginner should really want to use that word. I had no clue where the correct stresses needed to be in each word, because there was no sound in the application that I was using, so I had no clue what the correct pronunciation was. There were no indications of stress marks. So whenever I would learn a new word, I would just have no clue how to pronounce it. For example, if you say здравствуйте instead of здравствуйте, it just sounds quite funny. Now, one of my students recently said that she was mainly using LingQ in order to improve her vocabulary and practice her reading skills, so I decided to try it out. So in total, I spent a couple of hours on it over a couple of days, and I think LingQ is great for a specific type of people, but also not for everyone, because LingQ is very good for learning new vocabulary through context. And that means that learning vocabulary should be pretty much one of your main priorities at the current stage of learning. What I mean by that is that if you've been learning for, let's say up to 2 years, it means that learning new vocabulary is definitely in your top priorities, because without words you cannot speak. And just like I experienced when I went to Moscow the first time, if you don't know enough words, it's going to be very difficult to understand people, to in general have a clue what's going on. So words are just very important, and LingQ can help you with that. But since you learn this vocabulary through context, which means that there are specific stories that you're going to learn, or just stuff that you can import yourself, I'll show later how to do that. It means that you also already kind of need like a base of learning Russian, which means that if you have zero experience at all, like you don't even know the alphabet, you know zero words, you have no clue about the grammar, then it's probably good to first focus a little bit on that and then get into LingQ. So the ideal person to use LingQ would be, let's say, haven't learned Russian already for 1 to 2 months, and probably not a lot longer than 2 years. Unless you, of course, have been learning for a while but feel that vocabulary and reading, those are really my weak points. So let's quickly check out what exactly LingQ offers, and then later, so we can compare it later to my experience of learning LingQ. Now, if we check the home page, I got it right here. It says, learn languages from content you love. And their 3 main selling points are dramatically increase your vocabulary, watch your comprehension and confidence grow, stay organized and focused all the way to fluency. How do they do that? If I would need to describe LingQ in my own words, after having gone through it for a while, I would say that it's an assisted reading tool combined with a personalized spaced repetition program. So how exactly does it work? Let me give you a quick example of what personally stood out to me the first time I logged into LingQ. In 2018, on summer vacation, I read the book Picnic na обочине, and I would have loved to read the book much earlier into my Learn Russian journey, but I just couldn't because my Russian skills were not good enough. And when I logged into LingQ, I saw this. And I thought, if I just would have had this tool much earlier into my Learn Russian journey, I would have been able to just read the book while understanding the plot and learning new words at the same time, instead of waiting before I upgraded my Russian vocabulary and reading skills until it was good enough to actually read the book. So here you have the text, and you can just try reading it. Click a word if you don't understand it.
Перегнулся.
And it will show you the most common meanings and some other meanings.
Дотянулся. Ведерко.
And if you find the word relevant, you add it to your own vocabulary list. So what are the results when you do this? You're just able to read a text that is way above your current level of Russian, and you learn a lot of relevant vocabulary words that are specifically relevant to you. And another functionality of LingQ, apart from the reading tool, is that you can now go through their spaced repetition program that uses the words that you find difficult in order to learn 5 to 10 new of them a day and do some repetitions. So here you get the word ведерко.
Ведерко.
And you need to ask yourself, do I know it?
Ведерко.
And if you knew that it meant bucket, you press check. Then you get a new word, and the process repeats itself.
Дорогие.
Now, the default amount of words that Ling gives you is 10, but I recommend you up it to 20 because this will still only take, let's say, 5 minutes. And the main thing for learning vocabulary is that you just learn a couple of words a day, 5 to 10, and just do this consistently over a longer period of time, and you're gonna do great with your vocabulary. One thing that I recommend anyone do who's doing any type of spaced repetition, don't dwell too long on any specific word, just continue to the next one and just repeat it more often instead of focusing on one word for a long time. If you don't know it, you don't know it. It will come with repetition. Now, one thing that I was a little bit disappointed about LingQ was that they only had one part of one specific chapter about Picnic na obocine. But the good thing is that you can import your own materials. So that's exactly what I then did. Just type in the name of the book and читать бесплатно. Then you see a lot of different Russian sites and you just check a couple and you pick the one where you can find the full text. Then you just copy one chapter or one part of the book. Then you go to LingQ and on the main dashboard you simply press import. Now just paste your text, add a title and press save and generate lesson. Now you gotta wait a bit. Now just press view lesson. Now you can just do the same thing that we did with the previous text,
Вероятно.
but with your own imported text.
Вашим. Первым.
And this function where you can import stuff is actually very great if you want to read some classic books, which are just available in the public domain, or if you want to import a specific book that you've already, a modern book that you've already bought before, so you can just upload the PDF or the EPUB. You can also easily import YouTube videos, blogs, Netflix, or just content from your mobile device with the LingQ import extension, like I'm doing here with my own YouTube video. Now, one thing that one tip that is really useful here that goes back to the stresses is that LingQ does not automatically add stress marks underneath each word, but there's a fun tool that you can use called russiangram.com where you can just copy text into Russian gram and it automatically puts all the correct stress marks in there. So you just take the original text, copy it into russiangram.com and then copy it into LingQ, and then you'll have all the stresses there. So I personally really like LingQ because it just allows you to read texts that are above your level while learning relevant vocabulary at the same time. Now, I've been learning Russian almost for 7 years and my vocabulary is sufficient in order to read basically any original text in Russian. So it means that the value I'm getting at this point in time is quite limited. But if I would have found LingQ, the tool, much earlier in my journey when I was learning, let's say after a couple of months up until 2 or maybe even 3 years, it would have allowed me to read books that I wanted to read much earlier. And that would have been super valuable. After going through LingQ myself, I also decided to look up a couple of other websites, other reviews, what other people thought about it afterwards, so it didn't influence my own point of view. And here's what David Masters from Fluent in 3 Months had to say. The lessons are my favorite part of LingQ. They're very similar to the SMU approach in that you pick up the language through immersion. You're thrown in at the deep end and you're expected to pick up grammar and vocabulary as you go. And here's what Tara from All Language Resources has to say. Although I did not find it beneficial for languages I had never studied before, I think LingQ can be helpful for upper beginner to advanced language learners who enjoy reading. It is especially helpful if you struggle to find graded readers in your target language. One last thing I didn't mention yet is that they also have an app that also works great, and I love it when a tool like this has a great app because it means that you can just install it on your phone and take it wherever you go. It means that if you're waiting in line at the bus stop or just being bored somewhere or just lying on the couch after dinner, you can just take the app and just start learning there. Otherwise, you always need to get to your PC, and that puts like an unnecessary hurdle to learning. Where if it's in your app and it looks good, you can just open it and learn it all the time, and it's very conducive to habit forming and in the end to learning Russian well. If you're interested in trying out LingQ, you can check the link in the description below and try it out for free. You can also save 35% if you upgrade using the code Ari Helderman.